Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everyone? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. And before we get any further into this podcast, Adam, we have to do it. There are rumors out there. We have to deny them right now and confirm for everybody that neither you nor I will be interviewing for the head coaching vacancy for the Philadelphia Eagles anytime soon. We have not been asked, and we are in not position to do that,
at least as far as we know. Yeah.
I mean, the net is so wide. Yeah, that's true. Maybe it just hasn't gotten to us yet.
I mean, if every passing day that Josh McDaniels doesn't get the job, you scratch your head. Okay, what's going on here? But they're casting a wide net. And, the way it works, folks, is when you have your guy 100%, you don't start interviewing other people. You let them know that you let the agents know that, listen, we found our guy, and that's the way it goes. But we'll get into that as we get through the show here. But people, don't panic, folks. Eagles don't have any competition here, so they can take as long as they need to.
So I've been thinking about that. I'm wondering if the wide net thing is a good thing or a bad thing. And I wonder, people might say, why is it a bad thing?
Oh, absolutely.
Let me just say why I wonder. A lot of teams don't cast this wide of a net. And we talked about this last week. Normally, you may have 10 or candidates that you think the world of, but then you do a certain amount of vetting and then whittle it down to maybe 4, 5, or 6 that you bring in, and then 2 or 3 from that you may double.
It's actually a lot. So. You're right, but it's usually like 20, and then you get down
maybe
to
it's
10.
20. My point is that you whittle it down, unless they did have an even bigger list that we don't know about, and they're just whittling it down to a list that now will be about 8, 9, or 10 by the time it's done here. I don't know, but you're right. It's not a bad thing because they've got no competition. But this organization, sometimes you do worry a little bit about paralysis by analysis. You know what I'm saying? Overthinking it.
Yeah, here's why I really like it, because if I'm the Eagles and I know that, look, if this was let's say this was the start of the process, right? And they get through the week, they've not hired anyone. They keep adding people, and there's still 5 or 6 teams that need a coach. You'd say, what are you doing? Why would you do this when you got so much competition? Well, as fate would have it, all these really good coaches are out there, and the only other team that needs a coach are the Texans. And if you notice, Geoff, their lists barely overlap. So they got kind of a break. I'm kind of surprised at some of these guys that are out there. In fact, we'll get into Dennis Allen, Nick Sirianni, who are the new names, and Sirianni is really a good fit for them. Right. Not that Dennis Allen isn't, but in terms of what the Eagles are looking for in thought process and obviously the Frank Reich connection. But I was just surprised that some of these guys were either not hired by these other teams or were still available, and they are. So it's weird. I was not expecting, like you, I wasn't expecting this wide of a net. And I thought, and we'll see. People listen to this mostly on Wednesday morning, so we'll see what the next 2 days show us here. But it is interesting, the diversity of names in terms of offense, defense, and their thought process and the type of guys that they're looking at. It's pretty interesting. Yeah,
it definitely is. You brought it up before. It's like you wonder if they're just looking to get wowed by somebody, somebody else here in the process. So we'll get through some of the guys that they're going to talk to. You mentioned Houston. Other than Leslie Frazier, right? And has Eric Bienemy interviewed with them?
Yes, they interviewed 4 coaches: Eberflus, Bienemy,
right?
Who was the guy you just mentioned? Bienemy. Who was the other guy?
Leslie Frazier,
and one other guy on Monday.
Yeah, I don't remember who.
4 guys. Yeah, they interviewed 4 coaches on Monday, and
it's not a very big list.
What's that?
It's not a very big list. I mean, maybe
but they interviewed other coaches. That was just on Monday. Yeah. And by the way, if it's a Zoom session, you're not going to go very long. Especially like with Bienemy coaching this week, and we'll get into him in a couple minutes because people have asked us about it. Bienemy's was by Zoom, and guys are in the playoffs now. You can't see. In past years, the way it would work is this is the way teams and executives also would do it. Without COVID, by the way, that COVID changes everything. They would ask the teams to fly to their city, interview in a hotel room maybe, and you would do it like on a Friday if they had a Sunday game, because that way, if it's a coach, the game plan's in, Friday night, Geoff, as you know, coaches, this is a night where coaches get home early. They don't stay very late because it's usually date night, coaches will tell me, for a Sunday game. Or in this case, it could be you want to be with a family, whatever. So you could get them maybe for a few hours. And I know this is the crazy thing. I remember there was a head coach. It might have been the guy the former guy's name is drawing a blank. The former Titans and Cardinals head coach Ken. What was his name? What's his name?
Whisenhunt.
Yeah, Whisenhunt. Yeah, thanks. Whisenhunt. Yeah. As a matter of fact, this is obviously going back several years ago. I could have sworn he interviewed on a Saturday for a Sunday game. Now, it may not have been very long.
That sounds right. Yeah, I feel like I remember that too.
Yeah, but the rules have changed now, so there's only so much you can do. There's specific rules, and the league smartly adjusted, not making a coach that's coaching this week not be able to at least do a Zoom session. Right. That way, because the Zoom sessions they're not going to be very long. You're not even in the same. It would be pointless to do a Zoom session for 8 hours, because you want the guy in front of you if you're going to do it.
I agree.
Right? Like McDaniels did. Now that was good. Like you got him in there Sunday. You had him for several hours, probably 8 or 9 hours, and at least you get the guy in front of you, because it's so hard. You can't go across the room like you'd like to when you're in Zoom. It's a little bit harder. Right. So that's kind of the way I see it.
Plus, if you have a couple of people on, from your organization.
Exactly right. That's what I mean.
You worry about the skipping and
it's hard. It's just not
the same. Right. I agree. All right, we'll get into some of the guys that have come up on the radar here. We are trying to also, Adam, because the Eagles have a huge draft ahead of them, 6 overall pick. We're trying to incorporate a little bit of draft coverage in here as we talk about, obviously, the head coaching search, which is the number one thing. So we had Greg Cosell on our Inside the Birds TV last week, where he broke down Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, 2 quarterbacks. Oh
man, that, by the way, that show, it'll probably wind up being our second largest traffic number for these interviews, these video interviews, these ITV TVs. As soon as you put in your tweet about Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, I noticed the traffic went way up, because the Eagle fans don't care much about the games that they're not involved in. So I understand that.
Right.
But Wilson, and not that the Eagles are going to draft a quarterback in the first round, but generally fans, even if you're an Eagles fan, you still love the draft. That's just the way it is. And I totally get that. And we're going to have Greg involved with us as we try to figure out how to get him incorporated in our content. But Wilson and Fields, that was great, man. I learned so much about his thought process on both quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I don't think at this point, with the quarterback situation that the Eagles have being uncertain, I don't know if you can rule out quarterback at number 6, depending on
I would be shocked.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I think it's unlikely. But
yeah, I'd be shocked at that one. That one, because then it's like, and you're right. You can never completely rule anything out. Look at Jalen Hurts being drafted in the second round. Did any of us see that? No. I mean,
or even the way Cliff Kingsbury just had them trade off Josh Rosen and then.
Well, that was because of his guy. I mean, it's
that's what I'm saying. You don't know who are going to be
right.
Coach,
right. Oh, I see what you mean. If some new coach comes in here and there's a guy that he really wants,
right?
Sure. Yeah. You can't never the bit in the NFL business. Things happen where you go, are you really serious? Did this really happen? Well, that's why you say it. You'd never say never.
Right, absolutely. For non-quarterback news, and Andrew DeCecco did a nice job with a story on InsideTheBirds.com that details 5 options that may or may not be available to the Eagles at number 6, but they're kind of considered in that top 5, top 10 range. A couple of prospects that I think that Eagles fans would want to read about. So make sure you head on over to InsideTheBirds.com and check out Andrew's really good breakdown, because he doesn't just list the names. Andrew's really good at scouting and having an eye for things. So he tells you what he likes and doesn't like about some of these prospects. So you can check that out as well. And I'll say this for anybody listening, we did an emergency podcast the day Doug got fired. We did a live stream, and if the Eagles name a head coach and it's not and it happens on a day where our podcast isn't released, or at a time where we think it's going to be a while for the next podcast, we'll do the same thing. So be on the lookout for us to do that.
I mean, unless you and I are not available, we're doing an emergency pod. If hell yeah, we've got to do that, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then, so the other shows we did, so yeah, Jeff's right. So we did the emergency pod. If you missed our last Friday show, this is the first show that we really start hitting on in terms of here's the list that we have. Here's what we're hearing. Here's the background on the coaches. And this past Monday's show was where we really talked a lot about Josh McDaniels and the scoop that we had over the weekend on him. And look, this show, we're going to talk more about the coaches. Mm-hmm. See, the thing is, and, people had asked me this, is it important that they get these guys in now? Well, or a head coach hired now? It's not that big of a deal, but the thing that you want is, if you're a personnel staff, you want to know what kind of defensive schemes the Eagles are going to run, because that will set up their offseason in terms of free agency and the draft. So sooner rather than later, so the personnel people, and by the way, there's another reason, Senior Bowl next week. Boy, it would be great to have, whoever they hire, even if it's McDaniels, right, Josh? What kind of receivers do you want? What arm length do you want? What kind of scheme are you going to run on defense? Are you going to run, if you're going to run Seattle cover 3? Well, they want that D coordinator probably is going to want arm length. They want taller, longer corners. They want longer DNs. It's extremely important. You cannot run that scheme without taller DNs. They want arm length.
You're reminding me of the time Chip Kelly would go down there and have people measuring guys' knees,
wrist sizes,
and knee sizes. Yep. There was both, because some of it was able.
And
to
you would see them,
you
would see them. Okay, so what Jeff's talking about at the Senior Bowl, they would have these, like they'd put. If you're watching us on YouTube, they had this ruler, I don't know, like with this extension, and they would measure the wrist sizes. What the hell are they doing there?
Right.
What's that about? And I checked. Yeah, what's for wrist size?
Yeah, and apparently your wrist size or your knee. I know they did it for knees for offensive linemen. It was supposed to be an indicator of how much weight you could, the capacity that you could put on if they wanted to, move you to guard or just add bulk to your frame. They were sports science to a T. So that was funny. Yeah, you saying that reminds me of that. All right, let's get into some of these candidates first. We'll tell everybody, as we always do, check out phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all of the Philly professional teams like nobody else. They are for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. Make sure you check them out. phlsportsnation.com. Look for them on Twitter at phlsportsnation is their handle. We'll pause one moment more for a word from our great sponsors, including our friends from Sky Motor Cars. All right, so since our last podcast, there have been a couple of new names that have come into the cubicle here, or what do they say when a guy transfers into the portal, right? Like in college, into the portal. So Nick Sirianni, the transfer portal, the head coaching portal. Nick Sirianni, offensive coordinator for the Colts, and Dennis Allen, he's defensive coordinator, right? For the Saints? Yeah. And former head coach of the Raiders. So let's start with Sirianni. I know you liked this as well. I did as well. I've seen some videos of him and talking, and he seems very engaging and bright.
He is.
And I feel like he's got that, like he can handle Philly. And obviously their offense has done a nice job over the last few years.
Yeah. So, here's his background. He's not a play caller. He has worked a lot with quarterbacks and receivers over his career. Here's a Frank Reich protege. He's very close. They're like brothers. They worked together first with the Chargers, and this is Frank. If it wasn't Frank's first hire, certainly one of them with the Colts. And I happened to speak to him twice. You know how like you could go up to coaches after practice, just talk to them. You request the opportunity to talk to them.
Yeah.
So I had heard about him, so I want to talk to him. And very engaging, tremendous energy, a lot of energy. Really good command. I talked to the Colts about him. He's got it. You talk to certain people and you ask certain questions, you get yes or no. I asked one Colts source, I said, hey, is this guy a real head coaching candidate? The guy said, absolutely. We don't want to lose him. Really talented coach. He goes, I'm sure you know how close he is to Frank. That's why he's here. I go, yeah, it's cool. Okay. And he's done great work with their quarterbacks. Ironically, he and Reich have coached receivers before.
Mm-hmm.
And they just they're very close, and he's a protege of them, and he's a good man. He's late 30s. The thing that I like about his background is they explained. One guy explained to me, he goes, he's son of a coach. His dad's a former high school coach or current. I don't remember. I didn't ask if the guy's still coaching. His brother's been a long time coach. One of his brothers. So he comes from a coaching family. That's really good. I like that background.
Mm-hmm.
But here's my question. And I understand that they haven't hired anyone yet, and I understand this is the first full week for it. And yes, they started last week. I just find it interesting that this is a guy. Now, I'm not criticizing the Eagles. I'm just asking a question. If you're we know that they like to hire an offensive coach. It doesn't mean that they will, but their history would show you that they probably will hire an offensive coach, barring a surprise. You would think that Sirianni on a marquee team like the Colts, you would think he'd be like on one of the first guys because they were out of the playoffs last week. You would think that they would have interviewed him. I don't know. I'd love to know why he wasn't on the original list. It's not a criticism; it's just a question.
No, that's a great question. I was thinking the same exact thing. I thought that about Josh McDaniels. I mean, this guy wasn't even in the playoffs, and he wasn't among their first few guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he wound up having an interview that almost went the whole weekend. So it is kind of confusing. And again, that just makes you wonder about the optics of the situation. It almost, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but people are looking at this from the outside saying, you're interviewing so many people. You're bringing in a guy all of a sudden who you could have interviewed 2 weeks ago. Do you really have a plan here? I'm sure the Eagles have a plan, but
they do. But you know what? You kind of alluded to it. One of the things that it's like the Al Davis. I mentioned this before. I think I actually mentioned this on one of our previous shows. Al Davis, and I'm not saying this is the same case, but I think it's similar. Mm-hmm. There might be some guys that you want to talk to. You may or may not have some sincere interest in hiring, but you want to talk to them because either it's an opponent, aka Dennis Allen. You know this guy. He actually interviewed for a position job for the Eagles many years ago. It might have been Chip Kelly. I don't remember now.
No, it was it was for the job that Juan Castillo eventually got. He interviewed for defensive coordinator.
Oh, did he? Okay. It's so long ago. Yeah, you're talking about 9 or 10 years ago. I don't remember. But what I do know is this. Dennis Allen's a guy that they know. We'll get to him in a second. Now, Sirianni, now maybe Frank Reich called up. I don't know. I'd love to know that. Maybe Frank said, hey, or maybe they called him and asked Frank about him. Who the hell knows? But obviously they know Frank real well. I just find it fascinating. These are two really good coaches, Allen and Sirianni, that quite frankly should have been on their list earlier. And in fact, Dennis Allen, I don't know why he's not interviewing with other teams. He's so qualified. I don't understand some of these. Again, this is not a criticism of the Eagles. It's criticism of the process. I understand the Eagles are not using a search committee. They're not doing what they did in 2016. Bill Polian, Ron Jaworski. I get that they're not using a search firm like the one that Jed Hughes runs. That's fine. They don't need one. Roseman should be able to put it together a list. And by the way, this is all these other big names like Dennis Allen. They've gone against him. He's been a head coach as you. Al Davis's death, and it was a nightmare coaching there back then. I mean, it was just he had no chance. So
I was wondering how much
him in, but Sirianni fits their youth and offensive philosophy, I think.
I was wondering, and we'll talk about him in a second, if maybe just there was some tarnish from his head coaching days from the Raiders that didn't go very well, that he just didn't get that second chance.
Maybe, yeah. Fair.
But you're right about the Saints defense. It's been very good for the last
solid. Yeah. I mean, look, it's funny because Spags was their D coordinator. He was a disaster. Well, they didn't have any talent. You got to give a guy help. And then they run a lot of man coverage. See, this is the beauty of this thing. And again, I don't know for a fact why they're bringing, or do they have sincere interest in everyone they're talking to? I can't answer that. Only the Eagles can. But at the very least, if they don't hire Allen, they get to talk about their defense, their offense. We're talking about the Eagles' offense and defense. What if he's scouted them? If he's watched tape, does he know he's going to be interviewing? What does he think of the work? What's his philosophy? What's his philosophy on offensive defense? What do you think of our roster? You've studied us from afar. You've seen when we've been really, really good in 2017. You've seen when we've been low, like this season. This is the Al Davis thing. He used to bring in people that, quite frankly, he was never going to hire, but he wanted to know. He was a fan of theirs, and he talked to him and got notes. This was a tactic that not only he did, the Jets and some other teams I think did this time around. Mm-hmm. We know they hired Robert Saleh, but they also talked to a bunch of coaches.
Right. Let's talk about the Kansas City duo, because it's kind of been fascinating. If you remember, it was about 10 seconds after Doug Peterson's report of him getting fired that you started to hear Mike Kafka's name all of a sudden pop up as a guy the Eagles would want to talk to. And then over last weekend is when there were a couple of reports that the Eagles were going to talk to Eric Bienemy. And that hasn't happened yet. I know these guys are busy preparing for the playoffs, Adam, but Other coaches who are in the playoffs have found the time to do the 2-hour Zoom. So what do you know? What do you know at least about Kafka? And
Kafka, I could just repeat what I had before. I believe he's on Dan Campbell's list. Dan Campbell's going to be the Lions head coach now that the Saints are out, and I believe he's on his list. And then look, if the Chiefs lose this week and the Eagles have not hired their coach, I would be almost shocked if Kafka doesn't talk to them. Even if it's a Zoom, it would make no sense to me. This is a guy I could tell you is an absolute fact they've wanted to talk to. I couldn't tell you why it hasn't happened this week. I don't have a straight answer. And then, you got the Bienemy situation, which we'll get into in a second, which I have an update on. But the fact of the matter is, Kafka's a guy that they like. They drafted him here. Andy Reid was the one who drafted him. It's just really amazing. It was like, I remember Mike Kafka competing against Foles to be a starter. What did he break his wrist or something? So he got a wrist injury. And then we never heard from Mike Kafka again. It's just, and then they really liked him last year. The Chiefs cut them off at the pass. They promoted him. And this is before they changed the rules where unless you're going to interview the guy for a head coach, they can block you.
Right.
And so the Chiefs, the Eagles wound up not interviewing him, and they promoted from quarterbacks to passing game coordinator. And, just again, Kafka is their guy for the passing game, like Bienemy is for the run game. Though he doesn't have the run game coordination tag, he's certainly heavily involved in it. But Mike is a passing game guy. The thing with him is he's young and he's really relatively new to coaching. It's just like when you talk to Joe Brady, I understand he's smart. That's great. That doesn't mean he's ready to be a head coach. That's a big jump for a guy who's only been an OC for 1 year, only been calling plays. This is his first season. He didn't call him at LSU, as I understand it. So that's a big jump here. But Joe Brady's so smart. You want to talk to guys who you've heard are innovative or really smart, and Brady's got really good presence. Kafka's another guy, really smart, but does he have, I think you talked about it on our previous show, was our Monday morning show, based on what, I know you have pretty good Chiefs sources. You were talking about what you had heard about Kafka's presence and all that.
Yeah. You to answer your question, whatever happened to Mike Kafka as an Eagle, do you remember who beat him out for the job in 2012?
No, I thought it wasn't Foles. No.
Well, Foles was the number 2 quarterback that year.
Okay.
They're the number 3 quarterback. Can you remember?
Give me a hint. Give me a hint. Just give me the first letter.
Stanford.
Oh. God damn it. I know this. I know this because I met the guy somewhere. What I met it. Trent Edwards.
There you go. Now, if you remember, I'm going to take people way back.
Yeah.
Trent Edwards had about as bad of a spring camp. Oh, remember, because they never said he was coming off an injury or a surgery, but you could tell in OTAs the guy could not throw the ball past 10 yards. But he got a lot of reps, and by the time training camp came, he could throw the ball about 10 to 15 yards. And by the end of training camp, he could maybe throw the ball 15 to 20 yards.
Well, what happened, right?
I think that's when Kafka also got hurt, right?
Right. Kafka, I think, hurt his wrist. If you remember, Trent Edwards had like the all-time fourth quarter of a meaningless preseason game.
Yes.
He put up big numbers, and people were like, oh, wow, okay, maybe he'll make it. But so I ran into him at the Combine a couple years ago, and he's working for like a analytics company, I think. Real nice guy, like super nice guy.
Very smart, yeah.
God, it's amazing. The Eagles quarterbacks, some of the guys that have been in there, a lot of like Mark Sanchez, a former Eagle,
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I remember catching up, me and a couple of reporters, with Mike Kafka on cutdown day.
Okay.
After Trent Edwards, who again could not throw the ball 10 yards in camp, wound up in OTAs, wound up winning the number 3 quarterback job. And Mike was a different shade of red, my friend. He was not happy about.
Oh, was he pissed? What did he say?
I mean, he was professional about it, but he was clear. Like when the hue of a man's face is a different color, when it's a little bit more red than it is pink, you can tell that he was not happy about it. He was very disappointed.
I think he thought it was
unfair I think he believed it was probably unfair that he hurt his wrist and it seemed, I guess it was held against him.
Yeah, and I remember because it seemed like he was a lock to make the team. In fact, clear this up for me before we move on. Was he competing for the starting job against Foles? What was the story back then?
No, because this is 2012, so
Okay.
Vic is back, and Foles. That's
Okay.
Foles' rookie year, so he was just trying to. I think
so for the number 2 job,
second year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was really for the number 3 job.
Or 3,
Kafka
3.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you remember the year before, I think he had to play in a game because a couple of people got hurt in Atlanta, and he had a chance to either lead a comeback. I remember one of his 4th down passes to Jeremy Maclin was dropped across the middle, and then that was it for that. So anyway, that's the Mike Kafka story of why he disappeared. And I don't know if Mike ever he may have gotten an invitation after the Eagles cut him to somebody else's camp, but I don't think he ever settled in anywhere. And he was out of football.
And he went to North. Yeah, I went into a scout who he was working for Northwestern football as a low-level assistant coach, and they would always tell me, man, this guy is smart.
Yeah.
This guy's smart. I'm like, great, and we'll see what happens. And the next thing you know, he becomes this hot candidate to be at the very least, be an OC. Mm-hmm. We'll see. Look, you got a bunch of new head coaches, so we'll see what happens with Mike.
So do you think that the Eagles are kind of adding guys here and bringing them in because they're trying to stretch it out a little bit more to the weekend to see if Kansas City's guys will become available if they lose?
I don't know. That's a great point. It is a little bit, I don't want to say odd. It's slightly surprising that they keep adding candidates. But as I said, this is the actual first full week. And I would bet the house if this was last week. And let's put it this way. I'm sorry. This week, if there's still 5 or 6 openings, they're not doing this. They're going to cut it down to 2 or 3 guys and get this thing done within 48 hours. But they're not competing against anyone. Houston, right? It's not that. I mean, other than Bienemy, who may or may not interview with the Eagles, we'll get to that in a second. There's no crossover names. I don't see any on the list here. I mean, it's surprising to me, but Nick Sirianni is really taking his time also with these interviews.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I guess maybe they feel that they're not competing against anybody either, because as you just mentioned, and I find it strange because, Leslie Frazier, Bienemy, and Eberflus are kind of guys that you thought would get interviews by a lot of teams this offseason, but so far not from the Eagles. So we'll see. So what do you make of Bienemy?
Yeah. So I'm told that he's concentrating on coaching this week and he has no scheduled interview with the Eagles. That's what I know.
All right. Well, the reports are out there, and then so it's pretty.
Look, if they, like you said, if they lose this week and somehow the Eagles don't have their head coach, maybe he gets an interview. So that's all I got.
All right. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app today. Use the promo code ITB to get all of your sign-up bonuses. That is the promo code ITB to get all of your great sign-up bonuses on the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app. All right, so there's 2 things I want to do here. I want to bring it back to Josh McDaniels.
Yep.
And then I want to talk about Duce for a minute.
Sure.
So I don't know how you feel. I don't think anything about the Sirianni interview or the Dennis Allen one or anybody else they may bring in changes what we had said about Josh McDaniels and the Eagles and there being a strong mutual interest there. So, but like you said, they're not in a rush. I guess, Adam, it's fair to say, well, if you like him that much and you interviewed him, what are you waiting for? There's planning to do. There's a quarterback situation that has to be rectified. So I don't know why they'd be waiting. And sometimes things take a little while at the negotiation table as well, or you have a conversation and you're not 100% on page with that. I'm just speculating on why things break down.
Oh, what the hold up? Yeah. I still think if you go into the week, McDaniels would be their top choice in terms of, okay, if you had to have a pecking order, but that could change tomorrow. If Sirianni blows him away, he could even it up or even take the lead. This is the thing I've learned about this for 21 years with these coaching searches. There's so many twists and turns. I mean, you literally could talk to the agent who's doing the contract and they say, yeah, it looks like it's going to happen. I'll call you tomorrow. And then something happens. It's like, what? Someone comes in and blows the team away. That's why I'm like, listen, I never said anything on Josh McDaniels being a done deal. Some people have misquoted me. I said something on Twitter over one of our tweets from our Inside the Birds account. All I said is, yeah, he's the lead now, but that's just some of the guys that they interviewed.
Right.
It doesn't mean that someone else can't take the lead either. It's just this is the way these things go.
What I had said is that I had spoke to a very high-ranking league source who told me that the buzz and the chatter was that it was that the Eagles really liked McDaniels and wanted him. But that's just a league source who's hearing that as well and kind of confirming what we've heard. So you're right. Anything can change, and you wonder if somebody will blow them away. I also wonder about this, right? We know that Howie and Jeffrey are leading these interviews, and Don Smolenski as well. But really, it's going to be a Jeffrey Lurie decision with a lot of Howie Roseman input. I've looked at the situation with McDaniels and said to myself, I can see Jeffrey Lurie really liking McDaniels because of his affinity for a great elite passing offense in New England, his New England roots. He once tried to buy the Patriots. We know that.
Yep.
But I could see Howie trying to say to Geoff, well, there's other candidates, and maybe not loving and bringing up the fact that, he was given power in Denver. It didn't work out well, and he left Indianapolis at the altar. I'm just saying I can see this scenario happening, and I could actually also see the reverse, where Jeffrey as an owner would wonder about a guy who left another team at the altar.
He better.
Exactly. And then Howie trying to say, "No, it's time."
Can you imagine Jim Irsay, right? And I know Chris Ballard was very pissed off when that thing. He didn't hide it. I mean, I remember watching his press conference. I know Chris a little bit. Who was furious about the situation. They announced the thing. They had egg over their face. They announced the goddamn thing, and the guy walks away. That's disgraceful. I look. I don't have to guess. We know it had to come up in their interview with him over the series of hours. Obviously, they have to ask, and they have to gather their information. It would surprise me if Howie called Ballard and said, "Hey, what's your version of this? Josh said this." Or before we get started here, we just want to know what you thought of the situation. Sure. What did Josh tell you? They might have called Belichick. May not have. I don't know. But although they've done so many trades with them over the years. You got to get to the bottom of it. If this guy's a serious candidate, which he clearly is, to interview that long, you could have just done it 3 or 4 hours. They didn't. They did a extremely long. What did John Clark say? 9 hours? I mean, I didn't know it was that long. Yeah. It was a little bit longer than I expected. Yeah. I think he said in his tweet something like late morning to 8 p.m. or something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you don't go that long unless the guy's serious. I know the way these things work. That's a serious interview.
Right.
But again, so we can move on here. The fact that he has not been hired yet tells me they're not either satisfied or they want to make sure they've gone through all these other names, because this is not the Chip Kelly chase of 13. It was Chip Kelly and everybody else. They didn't care about anybody else. They wanted Chip Kelly. And that's just the way it is. And, it didn't quite work out that way. Obviously, well, he got the job, but after a reverse course, I mean, that was one of the most bizarre situations I could ever remember. But here we are in 2021, Geoff, 8 years later, and they're searching for yet another coach.
They are, and they've got one in-house that a lot of people think has a good shot in Duce Staley. We've talked about it. I tell you what, man, really, really is perplexing to me. And I guess it shouldn't be perplexing. It's not that it's perplexing because, we've covered the league for a long time and I see the trends and how they work. But how is it that nobody else has asked to interview Duce Staley?
I don't know. This is the problem I have with the coaching searches. And I mentioned Dennis Allen, how has he not been on other lists? I had a running joke with my friend Alex Marvez. Alex. He worked Alex, for NFL Radio with me. I had a joke. We were talking one of the years we were hosting through these coaching searches. We were actually on the air. I said, Alex, why do teams need to hire a coaching search committee or hire one of these search firms? You and I could take 35 to 40 minutes and put together an unbelievable list. I know I know all the good coaches. I don't even know these guys personally. I just talk to guys that work with them. Okay. Roseman and Lurie go to these owners' meetings every year. They should have a list together. Right. Okay. Right. This is actually a really good list. I'll give them credit. This is a pretty good list. It's hard for me to criticize this list for the Eagles. They're not interviewing chumps here. But
when you interview everybody on the face of the earth, by the way, it's hard to criticize it. You're going to get good names.
These are, but again, you're wrong. I don't agree with you. You can interview a bunch of jackasses, right? But you can interview a bunch of clowns who aren't talented, and I go, "What the fuck are they doing?" Excuse my language.
Sure, but when have you actually seen that? Have you seen that?
Yes,
much? Like a team interviewing like 8 guys that are all jackasses. All right.
No, well, here's what I'm going to get to. So I've seen searches. Let's say there are 10 people, right? They might interview 5 guys are good and 5. You go, there's 0 chance these guys should get interviews. 0. It's clearly someone's got an agenda here. And that's the shit that pisses me off. when these teams don't do their goddamn homework and they interview people, like they'll trust somebody, they'll trust a search firm, they'll trust the wrong people. And because and Joe Banner talked about this, you got to be careful when you talk to when you're getting background on coaches, right? You're doing your own search. You're not hiring anyone to do it. You're doing it on your own. If you don't talk to the right people, they'll lie to you. Like they won't give you the right information because they either don't want you to hire the coach, or B, they don't like you. And you got to be careful. You got to talk to the right people. And let's bring this back to Duce, who we all love, right?
Yeah.
If you just know that, first of all, this is a top 5 media market. This is an organization that's had a lot of success. I understand this is a bad year for them. We get it. Okay. They've only won 1 Super Bowl. They've only been 1 to 2 of them with Jeffrey Lurie, but they've had a high level of success. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's disgraceful that other teams, and I'm glad you brought up Duce in terms of other teams. How the hell do you not know Duce Staley is one of the best running back coaches in the league? It's a joke.
And like you look at Dan Campbell, who may be a great coach. I hope he does really well. I always root for guys, even whether I know him or not, to do well. I don't like to see people get fired.
Yeah.
He played tight end in the league, not a glory position. He coached tight ends when he first broke in with Miami.
He's a former interim head coach, though, for a while.
Yeah, but he went from tight ends coach to interim coach to assistant head coach. So much like Duce Staley went from running backs coach to running backs coach / assistant head coach. How does Dan Campbell get a job in a finger snap, and Duce can't get an interview with anybody other than the team that he's
here's the thing, folks.
And by the way, real quick, you got how many players have taken to social media to past and present?
And I hope, I'm glad you mentioned it. I hope other teams see this. Folks, and if you're someone from another team watching Geoff and I, there's a reason why people love Duce. Command and respect. Okay, I don't know Duce, okay? I know you were a beat reporter. You knew a lot of the coaches. I don't know him personally. Mm-hmm. I've been a fan from afar. I had one high-ranking coach tell me absolutely should be a head coach. He goes, I think he'd be a head. I've mentioned this before. He would be a better head coach than a coordinator because he's got such command, and he's got command in the room like you wouldn't believe.
Right.
So this guy is born to be a head coach. I'm so glad you said it that way. Why don't you nailed it, man? It's disgraceful. And you know what? I know that the NFL office, when they put together lists, it's disgraceful that, I mean, and they're always complaining about minorities. How the bleep don't you know about this guy? Come on, be better,
that's what's crazy. Like the NFL has tried, they've done this new thing
but
now.
You can't miss on this guy.
I get what I'm saying.
And you know what? If he does an interview, well, then don't hire him. That's the thing about diversity,
right? I'm not saying Duce should get a job. Thank you.
Put together your goddamn list. I could, Geoff, you and I, maybe we'll do an off-season show. I'm going to go through 32 teams. I could get easily 20 minority candidates. Easily. Mm-hmm. Easily. But the league can't do it?
That was the point. I'm glad you said that. That's the point I'm trying to make. I never try to tell people who they should hire because I'm not there. I don't know how Duce interviews. But my God, how do you not give him an opportunity to sit down in the chair when there are people telling you, and I'm sure people say the same thing around the league, that the guy's a head coach. He has the command. He has the presence. And, oh, by the way, he can coach too. Now, maybe he's not the offensive schemer as far as, a passing game, but look at every single running back that has come through the Philadelphia Eagles, whether they're really talented or not, or an undrafted free agent like Corey Clement being a Super Bowl hero, or Josh Adams, who led the team in rushing that year. I mean, my God, Wendell Smallwood had good spurts of seasons under Duce Staley. So what is there left for this man to do to get just another interview?
I apologize, folks, for my language, but I'm pretty fired up about this because I have a real problem with these coaching searches. Some of them are shams over the years. Yeah. Where you go, how the hell that guy? Like, because one of the things I appreciate, and I know you feel the same way, when you talk to coaches, you get to know them. I always ask this question: Who are your guys on your staff you think could be head coaches? These guys don't lie to me because I've known these guys for years. Mm-hmm. And Duce's name came up with this one coach. But as you talk to coaches around the league, they'll tell you who the frauds are and they'll tell you the special guys are. And everyone knows Duce is special. It's like, for Christ's sake, could you interview the guy?
Yeah, just give the guy an interview. That's all I'm saying. And by the
way, I don't know how Gerard Mayo got on their list. But I know this. Probably one of the smartest linebackers in the NFL for years. Not only is the first round pick, but I'm really, really smart. Right. Good for the Eagles to get him on there. I don't care if someone called and recommended him. Hey, you ought to talk to him. Great. I don't care how he got there. Right. And I know Roseman's very, very connected, but I just don't understand these coaching searches around the National Football League. I'm not gonna bury any coaches. I mean, that got interviews. It's just not right. But it's more about who's not getting interviews. That's my problem.
Right. One last point is that, if the Eagles wind up hiring Josh McDaniels, right, instead of Duce, and you wonder about the mixed messages. I mean, here's a guy, McDaniels, who did not do a good job as a head coach his first time around, got power hungry. It showed. I mean,
it was bad. By the way,
it was bad. It was really bad.
Read up on it, folks. Don't just take my word. I mean, the story.
No, it was out there. It's out there.
And he missed.
In fact, I remember the Sunday night game where he was screaming at his offensive line, and that became the first sign where maybe there were some issues there.
And the missile Tebow, one of the worst evaluations. I understand Josh is a pretty damn good coach. I've talked to people who played for him. He's a smart guy, and I know he was 32 years old. He was given way too much. He had full personnel control, which never should have happened. They had an awful front office, by the way. That was not his fault. But our job, as we've done, folks, for 3 years now, we call it down the middle. Even if it's people that we like personally, we're going to criticize them. That's our job. If it's worthy of it, we're going to do it. I don't know. I've never met Josh McDaniels. I don't know him.
No, but I mean, when you count the Denver thing and then you count the Indianapolis thing, and you know that there's some strikes against him, and
there's some major baggage, but you got to sort through it though, because the guy's won a Super Bowl 6 times.
Yes,
Brady. Okay, people want to point. Oh, well, how good would Brady be without him? That's not the point, folks. Players don't get great without coaching. Okay, that's the way it works in the National Football League. The Matt Castle story, which I talked about the last time, well, you got to be bleeping kidding me. Okay, he got Matt Castle a big deal for his coaching. Welker, Julian Edelman, Wes Welker, one of the best slot receivers at Edelman. I mean, these guys come out of nowhere, particularly Edelman, a former college quarterback, and become studs. So
and again, I go back to the messaging. This guy has survived. First of all, he came up under Andy Reid, who's one of the most. His chain speaks for itself.
Oh, Duce,
he survived. Yeah, Duce. He survived the transition to Chip Kelly, who was not a pushover, who changed many coaches on his staff, but did not change Duce Staley. And then he survived again and stayed with Doug Peterson and got promoted. So your organization has told you through its actions over the last 6, 7, 8 years that it values Duce Staley to the point where it's willing to make him the assistant head coach. So when the opening comes, you'd like to think he's getting a real consideration and it wasn't just a courtesy interview. I really hope it was real consideration.
And like you said, you said on our show like a week ago, it's funny. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. You said if it doesn't work out with some of these other big name guys, Duce is the guy. You felt like Duce actually could be the guy that gets the job. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I really hope that he's being actually considered, and it's not just we're going to give him the courtesy interview. All right. Are there any other coaches that you wanted to get through here? I know. Did we talk about the Bowles interview?
I heard he's got a pretty good offensive staff that he's putting together.
Right.
I don't talk much about. Oh, this guy did great in the interview. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't. It's rare that you hear a guy bomb in the interview. I don't like talking about that stuff because it's just not fair. It's rare for a coach not to do well because these guys are prepared for it. They do their homework. I understand. I've talked to teams before after them, and they'll go, "Hey, this guy didn't do as well as the other guy, and that's why you didn't get him." I'm like, okay, but it would be news if a guy if the guy bombed. It certainly would be news. I mean, that would be interesting, but. Bowles, look, they know the guy. The reason why the guy's on the list is because they love Todd. I know for a fact how well they respected the guy. He wasn't with the Eagles very long, but he did a good job. I've taken over for was after
Washburn got fired. Oh, well, Juan Castillo got fired, and Washburn got fired. Yeah,
right. They're big fans. He went to Temple, a protege of Bruce Arians. So they know him, really like him. Smartly, it's funny. A bunch of these coaches I've heard of, I'm not at liberty to say the names, but I do know that Bowles, Staley, Brady, the Brady one, I don't know what he said. Some of the names there, it's like, come on, dude, really? You're not getting some of these guys. Some of them you might, some of them not. But that's the key, though. You can't come into these interviews trying to hire one of your friends. It's not that good. You can't do that stuff. I'm not talking about anyone specifically, but I've heard these things happen. The one thing about Daboll, right? Listen, Brian Daboll. Yeah. Look, if they lose this week to the Chiefs, people are saying, I know the report from the Houston Chronicle. I asked some people with the Bills. They don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, that's just their opinion. I don't know if that's they're hoping. Look, they'd rather not interview after the Super Bowl. I mean, after this championship game, and they want him. He's a stud. He's done an unbelievable job. But if I'm Brian Daboll, he's been around a long time. He's been fired. He's been hired. He's been fired. He's been hired. This is the height of his career. I don't know that he'll ever get any bigger than this.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Houston Chronicle report, because I read the quotes from his press conference, and all he said was that I'm happy being the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, and I'm really focused on this Sunday, and my goal is to be a head coach someday, but I'm more focused right now on the conference championship game. He never.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like
explicitly said he wasn't gonna,
exactly. So I wouldn't look. I'm not saying he will. If they lose, he'll interview with the Eagles or the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
But I just these coaches, you got to be careful saying you're not going to interview for a job. What if Josh Allen gets hurt next year? What if they suck?
Oh, yeah.
You only get so many chances at the bite at the apple in this business. Anyway.
Absolutely. All right. You've heard us talk about that refined cologne from Manscaped. Make sure you get that along with your Perfect Package 3.0, 20% off and free shipping using the promo code ITB at manscaped.com. That is 20% off and free shipping. That's two great deals right there at manscaped.com. Use that promo code ITB. Look good, smell good, feel good with Manscaped. All right. What's the one more thing?
Just one thing, though. I do want to add. It is, and this is important, though. I was kind of alluding to it before.
Mm-hmm.
You can't come into an interview with the Eagles because you need to know as a head coaching candidate, you need to know what's important to them. Analytics and offensive coaches. It's super important to have this when you go in an interview. If you're a head coaching candidate and your agent hasn't told you, hey, listen, this is what you need to know going to this interview. They're going to talk about analytics, how important it is on game day. They may or may not talk about the draft and analytics. They're going to talk about who's your staff. And they will have probably done their homework on who they think the good potential coordinators are. If you don't come in with a good list, you're not going to get the job. I don't care how great of a coach you are.
Right.
That's important, man. You need to coaching is so important in today's NFL because of the schemes and the COVID issue. By the way, you got to have a strong personality. I mean, you want to know how Kevin Stefanski had 11-5 record for a team that should have been no better than 8-8? Put together an unbelievable staff. One of the better staffs in the National Football League. A lot of people didn't know a lot of these guys. They did a phenomenal job.
I like their defensive coordinator, whose name is it Joe Barry? What's his defensive coordinator's name?
Their D coordinator is you're close, Joe Woods.
Joe Woods, that's right. I thought he did a really nice job.
Great job.
He had some limitations there in the secondary.
Yep.
Thought he did a nice job.
No safety, by the way. They had no free safety. No free safety. You ever heard of that before?
And then they lost Denzel Ward for some really significant.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, that's right. He's did a phenomenal job, similar to the job the Eagles coaches did in 17 with all the injuries. And coaches are just they're tough-minded, and I've learned more about the coaching business than I probably cared to over the years because of the challenges and all the stuff that goes on. But I think if faithful listeners to our show before we get out of here have kind of learned the value of having good assistants, and when they're not paired up with the right situation, they're probably not going to be successful. And that's the one thing I could take that's a criticism of Doug Peterson that's extremely valid, which we've talked about now for 3 years, and it really wound up costing him his job.
Right.
You need to know, A, how to coach your coaches, and B, what they're good at and what they're not good at. And that I'm hoping Doug Peterson will learn from this experience.
Real quick before we get out, are you shocked some of the guys who were candidates last year are not, like Greg Roman has not, I don't think, interviewed anywhere.
He hasn't.
There was another guy.
He's been in the playoffs, but yeah.
Well, I know, but you could still say there's been no reports of interest in him.
No, right, correct.
He's been out now.
Greg is here's the thing with Greg Roman. Tremendous OC. Runs the most sophisticated running game in the National Football League. Very hard to get a beat on it. But you might remember this. He interviewed for the Penn State head coaching job that went to Bill O'Brien. I know he wants to be a head coach. It's just his is how you interview. His is simply how he interviews. He's just not out there personality-wise, but he's super smart. Look, Pete Carmichael, the Saints OC. I get he doesn't call the plays. How the hell do you not interview the guy just to get information from him?
Right. And how about, Dave Taub for the longest time was seen as Dave Taub. He's the special teams coordinator for the Chiefs. He's probably a little old now, but I mean,
Chargers, he interviewed with the Chargers shop. Yeah.
Right. After seeing what John Harbaugh and then at least what Joe Judge did in year one, you'd think some special teams coordinators would get a little bit more of a look too. You're right. The whole system is flawed, but I mean, no one's fixing it because of anything you and I say. But
I know it's just frustrating. I feel everyone's pain. I saw it on our Facebook board. I saw the boy. I'm glad to report we're not getting a lot of porn spam on our. Maybe the spammers are seeing how quickly I remove it.
I don't think you checked today because there were some today.
Oh shit. All right, I'll check. But anyway, I saw the comments. People want Duce. We love Duce.
Hey, I would love to see it
from afar. Again, I don't know the guy, but I'm just his command, and guys raved to me privately about him for years. I'm like, geez, why doesn't he get a serious look? And you made such a great point. Seeing this guy's name in social media, I don't know if Nick Sirianni on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Someone with the Texans, are you seeing this?
Right. I mean, is there any other candidate out there right now where you see the players just flooding the internet with supportive quantity?
You're not going to find a coach. You've covered this business for many years. You've covered the Eagles from a fine-tooth comb more than anyone I know. Could you remember a coach that was beloved more than Duce? I mean, tell me.
A positional coach?
Anyone?
No, I can't. Yeah, I mean, obviously they loved Andy as a head coach.
They got sick of him.
A little bit at the end, but yeah. But I mean, Duce could be a hard ass too. I mean, they're no.
That's it. That's part of the lore,
which is good. Yeah.
The players know what to expect when they get in that room.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just this.
Juan. I will tell you that Juan, the offensive lineman who played for Juan, absolutely freaking love Juan Castillo. So, but you're right. Okay. Other than that, few and fair between. But just talking to Trey and Jamal. And some other guys who played on the O-line there, how much they loved Juan. More so as offensive line coach than defensive coordinator. But I'm talking
about the entire organization.
Oh, that's different.
Players and coaches. I mean, I'm so glad I apologize, folks, if we keep droning on and on. We're just about done, but I'm hoping people keep pushing for Duce because he's a great man. Geoff and I have talked to countless amount of people who think the world of Duce, and you're so right. It's pathetic the league has not caught on to this. Come on, man. Anyway, I'm done.
All right, that's going to do it. We're all done. That'll do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. Big thanks to our producer, Hunter Brody. Check him out on YouTube. His channel is Sports Talk with Broads, his Twitter account @Broads81. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.